If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or follow us on any of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Live on Four Legs Podcast and on Twitter at Live on Four Legs Pod.
Portugal, 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 Portugal. Here I do foresee our people. Oh, it's so hard. Like Seattle with no needle. Oh, here in Portugal. La, la. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. We have many friends up from here. Makes us feel at home. Since the first time that we landed here in Portugal. Whoa, Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. And now it's coming to the end. I wanna know. Oh, if you let me, I will move here and live in Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal. Portugal, Portugal, Portugal.
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. And we're back for our final week in Europe for 2020 as we do the Around the World series all year. It's taken us since February. We started, I believe, where did we start in Europe? Like Budapest or
Sweden?
Do you remember?
Yeah.
One of those. Yeah, very deep Eastern European country, like one of those. But we went to Norway, we went to Switzerland, we went to Germany, we went to the UK and Ireland, and we've been basically everywhere. So the last place that we have is Portugal, which will kind of segue nicely because next week we'll be doing Brazil. So we get the Portuguese back-to-back for 2 weeks in a row. And you know, with how intense that this crowd is, next week we're going to get a crowd just as intense and maybe like 15 times more intense than this one is, which is kind of crazy when you think about it when we'll start to get talking about this. But anyway, Randy Sobel here, John Ferrer over there. And, well, what do you think? Europe, you know, this being the last one, some of the best things that we've talked about on this Around the World series have just been how different the crowds are, and I think this one is a good one to go out on.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, there's so many great shows, like so many epic shows. You talk about Berlin and London and Amsterdam, like all these classic places that they've gone to, and we've kind of seen like a different side of them that they can kind of, you know, that it's not a hometown crowd, you know, even it's not a crowd that speaks their language mostly, so they've tried a lot of different things. The set lists are usually different over there, and it's and you know, we were supposed to coincide with this European tour that they were doing this year. We were gonna tie it in with that, and now we're obviously wishing that had happened. You know, it made me want to go see a show there. You know, you were supposed to go to Amsterdam, you know, this year. That would have been great. And yeah, it's just such a different atmosphere than it is in the U.S. So yeah, it's been really interesting. We've done some classic ones and we've done some lesser known ones, and this one we're ending Europe with a show that was the end of a tour.
Yeah, I don't know where this stands in the 96 tour. I think everybody kind of talks about Berlin because, you know, especially people in the States, that's the one that everybody got to listen to because it was a radio show. But, like, there were 2 nights in Lisbon. back to back. Do people talk about these? Like, I know the full show is on YouTube, so at least it's available for people. But like, to me, now this is a shout out to you, random Instagram person. Like a year ago on Instagram, we posted that we were, whatever episode it was that we were doing that week, and the guy was like, "You should do Portugal 1996." And it wasn't even a 96 show, but like sometimes those things stick in us and we remember them. And when we said we had to do a Portugal show, I'm like, that one guy, whoever he is, if he's tuning in today, you got your Portugal show, sir. Congratulations. So that's why we're doing this one. But it's not one that I had like on my radar just sitting there like, okay, when we go to Portugal, we have to do this, because there's a show from like 2010, 2012 where they have the song Portugal, Portugal. So like that, they made up a song for the country. So we could have done that.
We'll get to it eventually when we go back to Around the World in 2025.
Around the World 2!
Yeah.
This time we'll hit Greece and Turkey. We missed those.
That's right. But I mean, and again, you can't go wrong with 96. Like, yeah, the Berlin one has the notoriety because of it was available. But, we talked about on that episode, a lot of people think the Hamburg show is even better. Like, they were just on such a high. Every night they were breaking out classic performances. So, yeah, you can't go wrong just throwing a dart at this tour and picking one.
Let's get into some Pearl Jam topics here. We got some information this week, and they released the Halloween shirt and the Riding with Biden shirt, and say what you want.
Terrible.
It's an awful shirt. That's like what Kid Rock would release for a Trump shirt, by the way. Like, I don't know if that
tone deaf.
If there's
come on.
Yeah, I don't know if there's irony in that or if they did it on purpose, but
now's not the time for irony, Pearl Jam.
Come on.
Yeah.
Get us, if you're gonna do merch, like get us something that we actually frickin' want. So here's the thing. Jeff did an article for Rolling Stone, and a lot of it was about, voting and about like, okay, now is the time we need to get people to vote, and this is important, and we're going to be talking about this a lot in the month of October.
They started that PJ Votes campaign,
mm-hmm.
where they're trying to get, you're trying to recruit 3 people, and that's their new focus right now. So it's great.
Yeah. I think that's terrific, and I hope that a lot of young people that are listening in to us or listening to them are taking notice and realizing what's going on right now. Like, this is a serious election year, and hopefully we'll be able to get involved for years to come. But one of the other things that he mentioned in that article with Rolling Stone was that Pearl Jam was set to play a bunch of battleground states in October, like places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. They were going to do a place in Ohio. I don't think Jeff really specified. I think he mentioned St. Paul, Minnesota, Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I would assume that they would end up hitting like Michigan, Detroit or Auburn Hills, maybe even going down to Florida, who knows, but like this was going to be an important October for them. That's basically what it all kind of summed down to.
Yeah, we kind of got a little bit of clues as to what that leg 2 would have looked like. I think the day of the interview, he said, "Oh, this was supposed to be the closer in St. Paul."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it would have been great to, if he had just run down the whole list of shows that they were planning on playing, that would have been very helpful. But yeah, that's something to look forward to if you're in that area when they come back. You'll probably be get some shows in that region, so that's great. Hopefully,
yeah, and hopefully, it won't need to be a vote for change type show where we'll be in an okay spot, but that's looking into a future that we are not very clairvoyant about at the moment. So we will hang on to that point. But I do want to mention, speaking of concerts and speaking of shows, I was actually at a show this past weekend. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about the experience, because it sure as hell was a lot different than any other concert experience that I'd been to before. So I saw Dinosaur Jr., and I saw them on a farm in Connecticut, and there were probably about 500 people there, max, maybe a little more, give or take. But there was definitely a disconnect. And I remember when I first brought this up in the episode, you said there could be a disconnect, that, Dinosaur Jr. is best when you hear him in a club. And now that I've experienced this, I full-heartedly agree with that. But it was very weird, and especially where we had our tickets, each seating spot was a grid. We had to bring our own chairs or blankets, and we were in a 2-person grid, white outline on the grass, and probably like 10 to 12 feet away from grids that were close to each other. But a lot of the grids near us were empty. So it felt like we were also all the way to the left side. So it felt like we were kind of off in the distance watching a show that we couldn't really see much of, and having not a lot of reaction after every song was just very strange. And they're not really a band that talks to the crowd a lot. They don't do a lot of crowd engagement. They might have talked to them like 2 times, maybe say, hey, this is this person, and I'm Jay Mascis, and that's maybe it. And I think at the end they thanked them for letting them out of the house for a night, and that was it. But overall, very odd experience, having everybody that much of a distance away from each other, having the songs, and in between the songs being able to hear like a pin drop, and not having a lot of people reacting to the songs. Like, this might be our future, but man, this is not concerts.
Yeah, I wonder, were you able to get any feedback? Did they post anything or say anything about it afterwards? Because I'm curious to see if they got anything out of it, what their thoughts on it. And they're, notably a band that doesn't interact very much. Jay Mascis is notoriously kind of I don't know him personally, but he has a reputation for being kind of standoffish and not very engaging. Like, he'll just look down at his shoes the whole time. But I'm wondering what they got out of it, if they were able to get kind of feed off of whatever crowd there was.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's difficult to tell, because I think that maybe it's one of those things where people have to do it more often. They have to do it because this was the first time that they did it. They said this was their first show since last November. So it was the first time that they did it. I'm sure a lot of people there, it was their first time going to a show of this nature, probably 90% of the people at this show. The venue has been having, the last couple of weeks, they've been having some random, folk bands or comedy shows there. But it's still, it's something that not a lot of people are going to be used to at first. And they're especially for the next little while, big bands aren't going to be playing on those stages. So if you want to go and see a small band, you're not going to be used to that, that dynamic. So I just don't know. I think people were it was an adjustment that they weren't necessarily expecting. And that's at least from my standpoint.
Yeah, it just seems like very, very strange. I just would have been weirded out the whole time.
Yeah, music is music, and man, getting 2 hours of live music is that filled me up for the night. Like that was a really nice thing to have after having basically a full summer just explode on you, and more a spring as well. Just kind of explode on you and basically get nothing. It's something that you kind of hanker for. And Dinosaur Jr. is not like a favorite band of mine where, I'm really singing along and really loving every single song that they're playing. But I think it took something out of it. It definitely did. And maybe had a band played that was a little bit more energetic and, maybe one that interacted with the crowd a little bit, maybe it would have been a little bit better, and maybe the crowd would have reacted a little more, but I don't know. This is going to be the future for a while. That's basically my outlook on this. Is there's no other way to go about it but say, if you want to go to shows, this might be it for 2021. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, want to take 2 seconds to talk about Patreon for a sec?
Absolutely.
All right. Remember, the whole month of September, if you donate to our Patreon for all of September, we will donate to runfreely.org at the end of the month. Whatever we make from that month will be donated to Kenny Maine's organization that creates knee braces for Army veterans that have ligament damage that are basically this brace prevents them from getting a leg amputated. Like, that's how impactful this is. So we wanted to help out as a thank you for him coming on the show. If you didn't check out that episode, it's a little bit back a couple episodes in the archive. Go check it out. He was a great interview. He was great to talk to. Has lots of good Pearl Jam stories and lots of good stories about other music. But definitely go take a listen to that. If you want to join our Patreon, all the donations for September are going to runfreely.org. And once again, we're just doing more stuff over at Patreon. John, what else is going on over there the next couple weeks, and what do we have up already that's that's been pretty popular?
Yeah, we just put out our Rearview Mirror Evolution episode a week or two ago. That was a lot of fun to do, a lot of fun to go through and talk about. We're doing a poll right now on social media, I think on Twitter, where you can go vote for the next song for us to do. We've got Bridge School episodes coming out soon. Again, another one at the end of this month. And then we just did a Devo episode, kind of a fun little thing where we kind of threw out some bands at each other and tried to pick what Pearl Jam songs they would cover for like a fake Pearl Jam tribute album.
That was a lot of fun. I think we had too much fun with that.
I think some of it was too on the nose. I think we hit some of those like dead on. That some of those need to happen.
Biscuit.
That's not the one I was thinking of, but if you insist.
It was dead on.
It was,
but
yeah.
it just not in a positive aspect where you want to listen to it.
Right.
But I liked our choices. I was thinking about making a graphic that was like kind of a side A, side B, and doing a track listing. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll, if I have time this week, maybe I'll post that to the social media so you guys that aren't on Patreon can get to see what we chose. But it was definitely an interesting experiment. So all that and more. You get, if you want to be involved in our setlist draft, if you want a free bootleg every month, that we send people a bootleg on the 4th of every month, that's available for you. It's all over at our Patreon. So patreon.com/live on 4 legs, or download the Patreon app and search Live on 4 legs. We are there, we promise. And yeah, it's just great content. We're just continuing to fill up and continuing to support the people that support us. So head on over there if you like our show and want more. All right, let's go into 1996 here. Let's kind of get our no code on. Get Jack back into the picture. I think it's been a little bit since we've done a Jack show, at least full band-wise. And, is there anything else we need to paint for this tour to kind of sum everything up and put everything together?
Well, yeah, we talked about it being the end of the tour, and that's always kind of a celebration. They're always going to kind of be fan-friendly on those nights. And they always start out a little straight, and then they end up usually going sideways about halfway through, and that happens here too. So yeah, this was a good listen.
It was, yeah, it was a good watch too. The full thing is on YouTube, like I mentioned before, and it just seems right from the get-go that the band is feeling really loose, that they want one last chance to get out in Europe and enjoy themselves and get to enjoy these crowds, because it really had been 4 years since they'd been over there. They were there in 92 when they were just starting to blossom. And we talked about that when we did the Stockholm show, that they had to change venue because they gotten so big in the course of when they had booked the show to when the date of the show was, that they had to get more people in there. Yeah. There was too much of a demand. So this is a different thing now. They didn't get to go here during Versus. They didn't get to go here during Vitalogy, and now No Code, they're able to kind of, take all this in, and the crowds have just gotten bigger and even more unique as they've gone along. Yeah,
and you can tell, the band definitely realized that. They definitely stretched out these set lists. We're looking at 25 songs here. That's even a step up from some of the 94 and 95 shows. So they were definitely they definitely realized that these crowds hadn't had a chance to hear any of the verses or Vitalogy songs.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I didn't even think of. Yeah, there's a lot to get to, and I think with most of these shows, looking at their set list, like they pretty much hit a home run for most of them, and this one, no different. So let's get into it. First one in is a song that they only opened with this very time that you're hearing it right now. Who You Are is the opener. And so it's funny because around this time, they were playing it a lot in 96. And I think about 25 times it got played this year, which is basically almost every night on tour. They played it 2 more times with Jack, and then once Matt came around, it went 10 years on a hiatus, 370 shows before they brought it back from 98 to 2008. So this is sort of the end of this song, and it's kind of funny that it's going out in a way on top as the opener, this being the first single off the album and one that I think they thought a lot of. Maybe other fans didn't really think too much of, but they definitely really liked the song at the time because they were playing it at the time.
Oh, and I love this. Like, Who You Are to open is, I think, really, really well done here. I love it. I think it sets the tone for the show. It's a good way to ease you into it. It's kind of got that. It fits in with like the categories of like a wash opener or like a hard to imagine opener.
The mid-tempo ones.
Yeah, where it kind of has a nice build to it. Like these 96 versions with Jack, like when it's good like this, it's right below In My Tree as far as like levels of just transcendence and like the band feeling. Like they really accent those hits in the song, and it really sounds good with Jack, obviously. And yeah, I thought this was great. Like I can't believe it's only opened one time. Like it should have absolutely stayed in the rotation. That it's one that kind of finds its way in mid-set. Like I think maybe around the time that they played Tremor Christ or Better Man on this show, this is sort of that like mid-set cool down spot that it's in. But I like this to open. I think this kind of like you said, it reminds you of like a wash. I think to me it's like along the lines of Can't Keep, where it's kind of like it's it's a little bit sometimes it's the song from the same album.
Yeah, where there's a little bit of momentum and like it can be positive, but it's also kind of a warm up. It's kind of a tune up to get you really started. And the 3 out of that being Animal, Hail, Hail, and Tremor Christ. Like I think that the transition into those made it what worked really well.
Oh yeah, and I never thought that Who You Are into Animal would sound as good as it does, but yeah, you don't usually think of that as a 1-2 punch, but yeah, it sounds great. And kudos, we'll talk about it too. This is another one. We've been doing a lot of these lately where it's just hit after hit in the main set. Like definitely fan friendly. I gotta think that this is a Stone set list. With his family being there, I think Ed probably went up to him and was like, "Hey, go ahead and pick some songs to play tonight." And we know, from the movie that's his MO. He wants to get out there and punch the crowd in the face.
Yeah, and that's a great point, especially for his parents being out there and being a ways from home, from Seattle. And you're right, Animal just has that drive to it. There's so much energy coming from Jeff. Like Mike is running around a little bit, but you almost never see Jeff like that juiced up. Like he was amped at this show. Like this is a great Jeff show for that.
Oh yeah.
Like think Pink Pop '92, and I know that's putting it on a very high pedestal, but like he's that kind of amped up in this.
That whole '92, '93 era, he was jumping all over the place. All those classic pictures of him and Ed like in midair. You think of that, and he was definitely channeling some of that stuff at this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Animal and Hail Hail are probably the two that kind of are the best example of that. And then you get into Tremor Christ after those, and Ed's voice is going to be a little bit of a storyline in this because he mentions kind of like how I am right now. I feel very raspy tonight. I might have a cold coming on or something like that. But he says his voice isn't 100%, but it makes songs like Tremor Christ really stand out.
Oh yeah, and his 50% voice in 1996 is still very powerful and still very good. It's not like his 50% voice in 2018 or 2016. There's a world of difference there. Lay off the cigarettes, Ed. But yeah, and Hail Hail too. I thought it was done really well. You get your first taste of the crowd at the end where they're just hey, like very loud, very prominent, and yeah, you could tell they were giving that energy to the band on the last night. I thought it really elevated them for this next little set here.
Yeah, absolutely. The crowd is as big of a member of the band at the show than anybody in the band is. Like, they make this special. And even the crowd chanting in the beginning of Corduroy too. Like, this is the crowd is helping them kind of feel loose a little bit. Like, Corduroy is very loose yet very in the pocket, and like everything seems to move really well, where it feels like you're listening to them and they're basically their perfect spot.
Oh yeah, and when Ed starts playing, he's playing that intro, very slowly, almost like it is on the album, and it's just the anticipation just builds really well. Like, I couldn't wait for it to kick in. Like, the tension of it is just perfect. And then it gets really quiet. The solo theme by Mike is great. Yeah, they do a little kind of 15, 20, 30 second jam at the end that's really cool.
Done a little bit like when the song was kind of developing in the Jack Irons era, but this one was. I like how they end this version of Corduroy. They kind of you're right. They take it down a little bit and they sort of let it fade a little bit, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and think too, this was only a month or two after that Bridge School where they did the lounge version of it. So maybe they were playing around with it a little bit, and maybe some of that rubbed off on them.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that actually is part of a mini side conversation that I wanted to have about this show, is that after this show, Ed stuck around in Europe a little bit and played a couple of solo shows.
Yeah. And
one of the songs that he played at the solo show was that version of Corduroy, but electric.
Yep.
So, and that's also, I think there was a show in Rome. I think there was a show... There were two or three shows. There might have all been in Italy. Maybe one Rome, one Milan.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
I think this kind of was the beginning of that too, because they did a preset. I think the Fastbacks opened this show.
They did.
And
yeah.
Ed came out with I think Kurt from the Fastbacks and Jim maybe, and they played as the What, and they did a bunch of Who covers. I think the night one they did 3 or 4, and I think this one they came out and did Leaving Here as the What before the Fastbacks went on. So he was already kind of doing that. Where like, give me like a little 3 or 4 piece rock and roll combo, and yeah, he went on to that Rome show. They premiered MFC. He was doing a bunch of covers, like he would do "Love Building on Fire" by Talking Heads. Yeah, like doing
a ton of Who and Police stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I think one of those set lists starts out with "The Kids Are All Right," "Into My Generation," "Into Can't Explain." Like, it's basically doing that Fastback set. So cool stuff. Yeah, it's that whole show is on YouTube too. Definitely check that out. Maybe that's something we'll throw in as like an extra bonus, either Patreon episode or something in the future. So definitely interesting to take a look at in this day and age. Ed addresses the crowd after Corduroy and asks for the house lights so they can see everybody. I think it's a 17,000 capacity building. Apparently the building was very big. So he wants to see everybody and mentions that they didn't get any sleep last night. His throat hurts like shit. So he asks for the crowd to help him sing all night, and they sure do. And then we get an early set Better Man here, but Better Man feels like it's very poppy. It's not it's not a version that kind of elicits that like call and response emotion. And this is just sort of basically what you would hear off the radio, no tags or anything like that. 3-minute version and they're out, but it sounds real tight and real good.
Yeah, and it was strange to see people holding up actual lighters at the end instead of cell phones.
That's right. Touch. Yeah. You have to be a smoker at this point. Like, not everybody has lighters. It's not like a phone where you can just put your flashlight on and bust it out. No. You got to be a smoker to be involved with these things back then. Where 96, I think most people were more smokers than not. I would think.
The Europeans have a reputation, but they could have brought lighters. That was a thing. You go to a rock and roll show, you bring the lighter for the ballad. There could have been some that just brought it for that purpose.
GA really looked intense in that too. I don't know if you got to see all the heads bouncing up and down. Like, it's almost at points in the show like borderline scary.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. There was one point, maybe during the next song, where someone gets thrown on stage or something and have to like run off. But they were packed in tight.
Yeah. Like one misstep, and we have to do like the take a couple steps back to sort of deal. Like, one person will trip over, and there might be some issues, But it seemed like they kept themselves in good shape, and it's just rowdy. Every single person is in unison, all jumping up and down during most of these songs. So really, really good stuff from the crowd. And that takes us into "Not For You."
Yeah, "Not For You" is a highlight for me, man. Like, I love when it gets really quiet. He kind of goes on does a little spoken word thing.
So I was going to tell you something. And usually we don't like try to explain the lyrics or anything. It's up to everybody. So all the words are, whatever you're hearing them, then that's what they are. That's fine. But this one I'm a little sensitive about. says it's not for you, right? But I'm not talking about you. I just want to point out that if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here right now. So anyways, I just wanted to make a point. Make it clear. All that said comes from you. Dedication's not even true. With no power and nothing to do, I still remember. Why don't you? This is not for you. This is not for you. This is not for you. Never was for you. It's for them. This is not for you. This is not for you. This is not for you. Never was for you. Yeah.
That was really cool, and he kind of does the whole speech again about, the lyrics are the lyrics. Whatever you hear is what they are. Your interpretation of it is the one that matters, and that's always cool. And then the original ending, where he's doing those little hitting those like harmonics or whatever. I think that's the word. But yeah, love the original intro, and this was a highlight for me.
So I'm not sure if this is like very common knowledge, but there is a Pearl Jam book that's coming out very soon, and I may or may not have an early release of it. I'll put it that way, but you'll hear more about that within very, very due time. But there is something mentioned in the book that I didn't know, and that's Not For You was actually written about somebody that wrote a letter into Ed saying, I'm a huge fan, but I'm a convicted rapist. And I think that that's part of what spurned that. Like, I think a lot of people will take it as, them saying, oh, this is not for the critics and not for the people that judge them. But I think that one story specifically is noted as it being a factor into why they wrote this song.
Yeah,
which makes a lot of sense.
Those fans that they were trying to weed out with no code, your quote unquote the jocks and the bros and all that who weren't really listening to the words.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they just liked rock and roll because it was popular at that point. But trust me, once Biggie and Tupac became popular, and then Eminem and more people came along those lines, they just followed the trends. That's all they do is they follow the trends.
But, those were your Limp Bizkit fans a few years later.
Oh yeah, they got out of Dodge, that's for sure. So don't need them, don't want them anymore. Good, get them out. Yeah, I love the finish on this song too. Just great intensity, just great driving by Jack. Drives the whole thing throughout, like fantastic. Big loud Portugal chants come after that. Again, just a great crowd from the standpoint of just they're loud, and they're, I think, just feeding off the band's excitement too. If the band wasn't as juiced up to play the last song of the last show of the tour, then maybe the crowd isn't as amped. But they stay like this basically throughout all 25 songs, which is pretty impressive for any crowd. So that gets us into a little bit of a cool down. Off he goes. Comes after a pretty intense Not For You, and Jeff and Stone are both taking a seat during this one. So it does feel like more of an upbeat version, like versions that we get nowadays, where it's a little less downtrodden. It felt a little more bouncy, a little more poppy.
It was a little bit more like the album version. Yeah, and I thought it was great. Like, Off He Goes, obviously one of my favorite songs, and yeah, it just sounded note perfect.
Yeah, look, no code era. They're still very fresh on the song, so of course, going to be very close to what they're doing with the album and all that. So yeah, and how many no code songs are played at the show? Like 6, 7. They all sound fantastic. So nothing bad about that. That gets us into the next no code song, where the mic gets passed over to Mr. Stone Gossard. And this is where he mentions that his parents are in the crowd, and he is singing this one for his parents. And, again, shine the spotlight on the no-code songs. They sound terrific. And of course, Mankind in later years would get botched a little bit every now and again when they play it, because, one thing or another, with Stone singing, something goes awry. But when they're doing this almost every other night, it's a really good version.
Now, is Stone the guy in the band that has to get his parents to come pick him up at the end of the tour? Like, the band's like, yeah, Stone, we booked the flight, but we ran out of tickets. Can you call your parents or something and have them come pick you up? Like, that was kind of funny. But yeah, it sounds good. Like, and I love what Jeff was doing during the solo, just really accentuating those upstrokes. Like, it was really great, and they nailed it. Again, you talk about 96, like that's the time to get these songs sounding the best, and this is no exception. Yeah, and then Ed comes back on and does a little Stone impression.
That's what that was?
Yep.
I couldn't even
he says
it was
something
so quick.
Lisbon to the, like, Lisbon, like, to the Mankind thing. He was doing a little Stone falsetto.
Yeah, that takes us into the big guns that he's teeing us up for here. An even flow, a daughter, and a Jeremy, or a Jeremy then a daughter. All the hits just sound like they are hitting all the right notes at all the right spots. They're crushing these, as they always do, and with bigger crowds that know the bigger songs 3 in a row, they can really get revved up and amped up and enjoy themselves. And you go back to this, being this very Stone set list, like, these are 3 back to back to back, where you can be like, okay, this makes a lot of sense that Stone would want to play these all in a row.
Absolutely. And I thought, and let's not skip over Even Flow. I thought this was a fantastic Even Flow, especially for 96. You get, there's like a screen behind him, and Ed kind of leaves. I think we didn't mention he had left the stage for Mankind. I think he had maybe gone back to work on his throat a little bit, maybe a lozenge perhaps, but comes back on for Even Flow. And then when the solo starts, he kind of goes to the side of the stage, and then he walks behind the amps kind of, and there's like, they have lights projected on this little screen. He starts kind of waving his arms around, like projecting a shadow onto the screen, like during the solo. It was kind of cool, and he actually got so into it that he missed his cue to come back and sing. It was just cool. It was like adding a little visual component, because they obviously they don't work with a big stage setup. There's not a lot of like, but it was. He just kind of took the moment, like, oh, hey, I can do a little something here. He's kind of waving his hands, like, all up in the air and making these. It must have been really cool for those people. I thought this was a great version of music.
Yeah, I don't know if this came later in the show. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention at the right moment, but the lights in the back, I think maybe way later when you get into the encore, turned into the colors of the Portugal flag. I don't know if that was during the whole entire show. Did you notice that? There was like red and green.
No, I didn't see. I noticed it was kind of at this point. I think it was still kind of a yellowish green.
Okay,
I could tell, but yeah, it could have been there. I know he does go in someone in the crowd hands him a Portuguese flag later on.
Right. Yeah, it might have been after that that they had changed it. So yeah, I'm not sure, but really the sets and the lighting rigs are basically very basic from this time. Like no, very standard setup and all that. Like whenever you watch these shows, the most that you get out of the background is incense burning, and that was pretty much it. So. But yeah, anything that they do that's an addition to that is a pretty cool addition. I actually, from these three, I thought while Even Flow was really good, I thought Daughter was a really good standout too. I just thought like sometimes Daughter just either you're waiting for the tag and the song just kind of passes you by really quickly, but I thought this version of Daughter was actually really fantastic, and it brought way into the tag, like the way that they got into it and kind of dragged it out and built and then kind of brought it down a little bit at the end too with the Androgynous Mind. Like I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I mean all three. I agree that you get a little Sonic Youth tag on Daughter and a little Androgynous Mind, which is always great. And even during Jeremy, Ed's being really emotive, like he's doing the up down during Jeremy, and like the crowd takes it at the end. It's really great. Mike throws his guitar up in the air at the end, and like some definitely cool moments. This would have been the part. It's our old songs. We can just kind of sleepwalk through these and get to the newer ones. But no, they really felt like they were into it. And it was a great little mini set of the hits from the early years.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, the crowd hadn't heard a lot of Versus or Vitalogy, and really I don't think they were even in Portugal in 93 or 92. So, this is the second time, because they played the night before, this is the second time they're there, you want to hit them with the things to remember, and I think that these three, at least at the time, are ones people are going to be like, oh man, like that really made my night. So yeah, great stuff. And this is sort of this is used as a transition here sometimes, which is what we know of as being an opener or as an opening trio type song, is the 13th song in the set, which seems strange, but they did it a couple times during this tour. And that follows up with Rearview Mirror, and I just kind of a combo of two songs that I never thought existed. Like there's tons of songs in their catalog that you would never put next to each other. Would you ever put Marker in the Sand next to I don't know, Around the Bend or something like that? Like pick two random songs and you would probably never see them next to each other. And sometimes, and Rearview Mirror aren't like two rare songs at all, but it seems like they would never kind of meet in this same sort of situation ever.
Yeah, and that's the second time we've had one of these in this set. We had Who You Are and Animal to lead off, which is a little strange to think of in the context of now too. But you got to remember too, this is still the Ed guitar off and the Ed guitar on parts of the main set. So this would be Ed puts the guitar back on for sometimes after just singing for Mankind, Even Flow, Jeremy, Daughter. So yeah, it's strange to think of now, but yeah, sometimes still hadn't really found its place yet. It hadn't really migrated to that early set spot that it would get to. But yeah, like you said, it's just kind of used as a transition. And then what else can you say about Rearview Mirror? It's fantastic.
We've talked a lot about it. It's in our Evolution episode. So if you want to hear more about Rearview Mirror, especially 96, because we talk a little bit about 96 versions. So yeah, I think that's a good tee up for you guys to go head over to our Patreon and go listen to the Rearview Mirror episode instead of us talking about Rearview Mirror right here, because of course it was a fantastic version. It's Rearview goddamn mirror. Come on, sirs and madams. So that leads way into another song that we've actually covered on Evolution, the one before Rearview Mirror, Immortality, which I find to be probably the highlight of this show. You get like the beginning, that intro arpeggiated part is extended a little bit, and they kind of play it for maybe like a minute or so before they break out into the song. I thought that was kind of a unique thing that, usually it's just kind of one little thing, and then right into the song. But this lingered a little bit. It was kind of cool.
It's wonderful, and like I said, this is one of the highlights for me as well. I thought Mike and Jack at the end just absolutely nailed it. You know, this one we talked about. Oh yeah, where he really came on the song, and just the ending is just fantastic to listen to.
Jack is, for this song, an MVP, and it's so hard because when you listen to the recording, you automatically think like, oh, that's got to be Jack, right? Because you attribute the song to Jack, and you're just like, oh, it's Dave A. But yet Jack kind of transcends what this song identity really became, and this really, to me, there are a bunch of songs like this. And I know it for some of these, like, because they are Dave A songs, literally written by Dave A, like Last Exit, like that to me is like a quintessential Jack song to me. You know, it's so weird that we think this way, but you know, Dave A didn't have a lot of time with these songs. He recorded them, but didn't play them a lot live. We really got to know these songs with Jack.
That's right. Yeah, and he really took him to the next level. You know, we've talked about it before, like what would it have been like if they had scrapped those Dave A Vitalogy recordings and re-recorded it with Jack, you know, how different an album that could have been.
Yeah, probably a little bit less raw, but still like maintained its vibe. But there could have been a world where that would have happened. And, you know, look, I think my top 3 albums all have Jack Irons' influence on them being, you know, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th albums in their discog. So yeah, I if Jack was on that full album, I think it would have it's still, Vitalogy and Yield are still neck and neck as 1-2, but I think, who knows, it might have surpassed it. Just saying, you never know. Yeah, so Immortality is fantastic, great performance. Probably one of the best of this show. Ed addresses the crowd afterwards and, you know, mentions it being the last night of the tour, saying that there might be a few songs that we didn't get the chance to play a lot. And somebody throws a shirt or a towel on stage, and Ed sniffs it and says, hey, was it a shirt? Okay. And he says, hey, it actually smells pretty good. So, you know, that seems like 93 Ed coming out a little bit with a lot less saying fuck. but still doing something really random and really weird. But that gets you into Footsteps, which was not, like you said, not played a lot on this tour. 3 times, and then played a couple times on the US leg. But this is what would be considered one of their collector's items, one of the serious collector's songs at the time, I would think.
Yeah, and you think of it too, because it's so prominent now, like it's become part of that Encore 1 or whatever. You don't think of it as ever being like a really hard to find song, but yeah, during this mid-period it was.
And they were still doing it this time. There was no harmonica. It's a great rendition. It kind of feels like it's in its original adaptation. So, Mike's solo is really good on it. It's nothing like completely special. It doesn't have that atmospheric special vibe, but it's kind of fitting the nature of what the song was back then. And then it's just kind of a desolate sort of, depressing tale, and they kind of keep true to it, which I really love, and I like versions of it now too for what now is, but looking as to what it was then, if we were doing an evolution episode on it, like they kept true to sort of the undertones of the song's creation.
And they kind of missed an opportunity for a little reverse Mama-san here too. We almost got that in order. Yeah, we kind of at least opposite order or mixed or something like that. Yeah, and without a set list break in there too. But yeah, they do the whole Mama-san, which is definitely not, at least without doing the 3 songs in order like that. I don't know how rare that is, but sounds like probably doesn't happen too often. So this is a cool little section though. After Footsteps, we get Hunger Strike, In the State of Love and Trust, into Alive, and I think that this section here really kind of brings out the party atmosphere, and this is a different party atmosphere than we've seen from this kind of era, or even before this, where like this is really a celebration of the final night in the tour. And I said this before we started recording, that I don't know if they were doing stuff like this, and you mentioned New Zealand 95, and I know we covered that, but I can't remember what we did so long ago. There was no quarantine back when we did that episode, so I don't remember. But like they're really building into this fun, energetic environment of like leave everything on the stage for the last night. Definitely, and we talked about too, where a lot of these shows tend to get sideways, like they just throw the set list out the window and they just like, let's just have fun, like let's just play whatever we want to play. And I think that's what happened here. I think you see Ed talking to Stone a little bit, and like they're probably like planning out, okay, we're gonna do this, then this. And I don't even think I don't think we have a set list picture from this, but I don't even think this probably was even listed. I think they were probably just going off the cuff on this, Hunger Strike and State of Love and Trust. Like they had been doing that a little bit on this 96 run, where they would play just the first verse and chorus of Hunger Strike as like a little treat for the crowd, and they eat it up completely.
Yeah, and that was kind of cool when Ed says, all right, I'll be Ed, you be Chris.
Right.
Kind of a cool part there where, just kind of, again, another collaboration with a crowd that was already there to begin with. You mentioned before Ed was really animated and emotive during, Jeremy? He was doing the same sort of things with State of Love and Trust. He was kind of like making a finger gun, and he was kind of pointing it at the crowd and pointing it in his head and in his mouth. And then he said at some point, he said, fuck that. I don't know what he's referring to. I don't know if he's referring to the nature of the song.
I thought he said I fucked up. I thought he said I fucked up.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I thought he said fuck that.
I know he changes the line might be at a difference here. Later on. He says, I'll do this with your help.
I did this with your help, right.
Yeah.
So again, that leads me to think that maybe it had something to do with the nature of the song that he's thinking while he's singing it and making the finger guns and stuff. He's thinking like, oh, fuck suicide. No, why are we singing about this kind of content when like we don't feel the same way? I wonder if that was going through his head.
Maybe.
That's kind of in the sort of tune of songs can just be songs now, instead of like still feeling the same way that you did
that is
about a
something
certain
he would
song
do,
where
absolutely.
right. Which look, State of Love and Trust is always going to stay around a set list. It's never going anywhere. So, but it might be another one that had a curse to it that had been lifted after a while because the crowd had taken a liking to it so much.
Yeah, and again in a live too to end the main set, Ed comes over and lifts Mike up on his shoulders to play it, so it carries him around a little bit. That's something you're only going to get on like an end of the tour night.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed, but he did the little elaboration on Of Course There Is, where he embellished it a little bit, and I don't know if he was actually doing that in '96. I think that was more of a once like after 2000 and after they took the hiatus from the song. I think that's when they really started kind of, just doing the sarcastic, well, of course there is, and really building to that and that being a crowd moment. But this, he kind of just does the same thing. It's not really a thing at the time, but, it's notable. At least you can tell he's just kind of brushing it off. Oh, of course, like, this version feels like the curse had been lifted at this time, because it feels like they're just playing this to the crowd. They're playing it with the crowd in collaboration with them. The crowd is going crazy. They're singing every single lyric to it. Like it feels more special than what the song's original intentions are.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, a lot of that's probably due to it being the last night of tour. Keep going back to it, but it can't be overstated. These shows are special, and there's this last half of the set here is testament to that. Like it's just hit after hit, and all these cool moments. We'll get to a couple more in the encore too that are fantastic.
And you can just tell everybody's in good spirits. There's a mic smash at the end, and ready for a little bit of a break. Come back and do 6 more songs after an encore. And they begin that encore. There's only one here. They're going to do 6, and they're going to bust them all out all in a row. They start off with Once and go into Black, so a little bit of a 10 section here. Once I thought sounded really cool. Again, I think they were juiced for it, and it didn't sound. You always say like this kind of sounds like an Aerosmith song. This sounded more of like them just being them and them just kind of taking over the arena aspect. Like it didn't sound like that early 90s kind of, non-Pearl Jam vibe.
Right. It's
getting
definitely not a 91 or 92 version, but it's not quite a 2013, 2016, 2018 version.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get the fist pumping or anything like that, but the crowd is definitely into it. They're definitely rocking along with it.
Yeah, and Ed skateboards out on the stage for the encore too. That got a nice little crowd reaction.
Yeah, he was doing that a little bit at the time. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That version of Black, great version of Black. It's again not a version that gets like overly emotional. They don't do We Belong Together tag. They don't do like, they don't kind of quiet it down for the do-do-do-do-do's. They keep it driving the whole time. I thought it was a great version.
And the lighters are back. That's another one for the smokers to pull up the lighters. That was cool to see too.
This is where Ed kind of mentions again, this is, these songs are going to be the last songs that we play in 1996, and they're a group of people that have seen us the entire tour, so thank you everybody who've come out for every show, and said that the song is just about good thoughts, getting us in the Smile. This probably is sort of a precursor to where we see Smile nowadays, being in that, that Encore 2 just sort of opener, to get everybody loose and feeling good before they get into stuff like Better Man Alive and all that. So it's I don't know where they were playing Smile at this time in '96. I'd assume that maybe sometimes they were doing it in the spot, but also I think they were doing it in the main set a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think this was a late one too that came off the album. I think they didn't debut it until this European leg, so it was still kind of finding its spot, but. Yeah, and it was weird too. It really stood out because you think about, at the end of the main set, you have Footsteps, Hunger Strike, State of Love and Trust, Alive, Once, Black, Smile, and then so it kind of sticks out as being like all those 10 era songs at the end of this set here. Smile is like the only new one that you get. So yeah, I thought it was great. You get of course Jeff and Stone switch and Ed goes into the crowd like. We talked about the crowd being so rowdy early and being packed in. It seemed like he just dove into the crowd. He couldn't tell what he was doing, but he comes back with a Portuguese flag and like kind of does a little bit of playing with it, like throws it behind him on Stone and plays with Mike a little bit, then puts it on the drum. Like that was a nice touch.
Yeah. No, they had a lot of fun with that. I think Smile really became at this point. I don't know if they were waiting for No Code to just sort of kick in and get people more familiar with the tracks. They do that with albums sometimes where, like Getaway, where midway through the tour they're like, okay, now we're gonna get to Getaway.
And
or
the switching
I think on the
instruments thing
Backspacer.
too, Jeff probably maybe Jeff did feel comfortable, but he might needed some more practice on that until they could really break it out. I'm sure they were sound checking it a bunch, so yeah, it could have been any of those things.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I think what they realized what they had with the song was something for this kind of moment, that they could be loose, they could joke around on stage together, they're switching the instruments, so that's kind of, that's sort of a novelty, and like Ed can play a little harmonica, that's something he really didn't do at all at the time, and it just kind of, it brings together that atmosphere like we were saying before, the final night of the tour. And it's making it feel bigger than it is. They're really playing it up.
The Barcelona version from just a few days before ended up on the B-side to that Fan Club single. So yeah, they were definitely into it.
That's right. Yeah. So and they don't play it very often. It's only been played I think 77 or 78 times, right. And but you would think pretty much every time that wasn't Moline, it's going to be in this spot. Just hanging out in the encore.
Yeah, it's great.
I like it, and I think it really fit in, and we get sort of to end here, the party scene is in full force, and we get a Porch, Ledbetter, Rockin' in the Free World, which you would kind of consider as like your 96 bread and butter? Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely. I think even Ed comes out after Porch and says, oh, that one's usually the one that we end on, but we're going to do a couple more for you. Right,
yeah. And, of course, Porch has some hi-jinx going on. So, yeah, what's going on there? He does a little bit to Stone's side. He gets on, I guess, a little bit of a platform. Not doing really much anything, just kind of, just perched up there. Yeah, and then jumps down. He jumps down. It doesn't look like it's too high. It's probably about, 8 feet high or so. And then he gets a little bit more risky, goes over to where Mike is, and he's climbing up on a lighting rig, and that's like you're getting to the top of the aggro crag up there.
Yeah, it was high up, and the video is kind of trying to find him, and they catch him, poking his head out, and he holds up this thing. You can't really tell what it is at first. He holds it up like a trophy, like, look what I got! Like I did it, I made it.
What's he doing with the?
And it's a push broom. and he comes back down with it intact and starts sweeping the stage off. I guess trying to help out a little bit, trying to you always want to leave the place cleaner than you found it. The last night of the tour,
He did stop to pick up a pick and throw it into the crowd. Right. So,
yeah, he's a little. You get to see Ed, the mercurial side of him a little bit there.
Good moment, and like this is a 8-minute version of Porch,
and half of it is
jam alone.
And we talk about you can talk about different influences in Porch and like fast Porch, but they were just wasting time waiting for him to climb up this thing. They were just stalling for him to get up this sliding rig and then get back down. There's not much musically to this little middle section of it.
Right. I think if you were just listening to the actual bootleg and not watching it on YouTube or watching it on video, I think you would be like, what are they doing? It sounds like they're kind of directionless here. But the crowd reacts, so like you have to know that something is going on at some point. So, it is Porch, and it does happen every now and again. But just fun moment. I think probably everybody in that crowd is gonna come out of that saying, I remember seeing Ed just climb to the heavens up there. So, like, if that person from Instagram gets back to us and says that he was at the show and this is his moment to remember, I'm gonna guess that this would be one of his favorite moments. That's just a guess. Just a guess.
It's the thing I'm gonna remember from watching the video, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this and just Jeff going absolutely nutso during the beginning stages of this show. After Porch, though, Ed mentions they're going to play one more and said that there was a request for Garden, but they weren't going to play it because they were just running out of time. And that's where I think you were mentioning before that, they were just kind of going off a whim, and maybe they had a piece of paper and Garden was written down with a question mark or something like that. Right. Maybe it was penciled in somewhere.
And I think Stone gets on the mic and says, "Oh, that's my fault. I forgot how to play it."
Were they doing it that often at the time? Like they
so.
Didn't fully leave it out. It wasn't like totally gone from the Jack era.
Yeah, but the last time it was played was Red Rocks until 2000. Wow. So from 95 to 2000, it wasn't played.
More than a year. Okay, so it was gone during the Jack era, basically.
Yep.
Wow.
That's a shame. I thought it would have been really interesting to hear his take on it.
Yeah. I thought that was one that it was more rare, but it wasn't totally gone like a Why Go or a Glorified G.
Yeah, it came back in 2000, but it's a shame. Like it would have been cool to hear Jack's take on those songs. Yeah,
I mean, we do have Red Rocks. We can get to Red Rocks at some point, so when we do, that'll be it. Yep. But yeah, I'm sure outside of that, it probably doesn't really have much of a life form. So they do get to Ledbetter. They finish off with Rockin' in the Free World. It's a great finish here. Ed in the crowd is going back and forth a lot, Rockin' in the Free World, and again, just feeding off energy off each other, and just Ed takes it kind of, they get really low before the 1,000 Points of Light part in the final verse chorus. And they're getting everybody electrified. This is their last moment that they could spend in Europe, and they wouldn't go back to Europe for another 4 years. I don't think they went in 98. They went to Australia instead, and they wouldn't be back for 2000. And 2000 is not a European tour that they really think about too often, because obviously it kind of comes back with some bad memories. But like this, when you can go back and kind of take yourself and channel yourself into their minds, they're probably thinking that, wow, these were the moments that we remember from those early Europe shows.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, if this had been a U.S. tour, you'd probably get these last two switched. You'd end with Ledbetter because that's the one to send everybody home happy. But these European shows, Rockin' in the Free World is kind of their send-off to Europe, and like, our kind of the last love letter from the U.S. to Europe. So that was definitely fitting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it finishes off a really, really solid show that just has, great crowd participation. And I'm sure we with the magic of editing, I'm sure you got to hear a lot of what the crowd was doing and a lot of how they've been reacting, and that's the story there. So how are we gonna put this into favorite moments? Is the crowd gonna kind of dictate where our favorite performances are from this show?
Yeah, a little bit. It was tough to pick on this because I think we've talked about there's a couple that stand out, but that third one you could go so many different ways. But I'm gonna go with Porch as my number 3. The whole climbing up, getting the broom, sweeping the stage, finding the pick. That whole thing. Watching it, I was cracking up laughing. It's that side of Ed that you only comes out every once in a while, and it was great to see. My number 2 is gonna be Not For You. When it got really quiet. He kind of explains it a little bit. The ending is fantastic. The original ending I love. And my number 1 is going to be Immortality for all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah, our number 1 and number 2, I think this is like the 3rd or 4th week in a row where we had the same, top 2 and no change. I have Immortality as my number 1 and Not For You as my number 2. I'm going to say number 3 is actually going to be Alive from this show. I thought this was... you go along with sort of the theme, and the theme was sort of crowd pleasing and sending them home happy, and this Alive reminded me a lot of what they would do with Alive today, and how this would kind of be like a grand finale of a set. I know that it ended the main set, not the encore like it does nowadays, but it still felt like that big moment that kind of leads you to the end of the set. It felt special from that standpoint. Like, this is the last night that we're on tour in Europe. Like, we're gonna leave it all out there. You get Ed put Mike on his shoulders. You get him doing the embellishment of course there is line. Like, that's pretty special stuff to me. So yeah, but you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with Alive or Porch in that spot.
You could have gone Who You Are. You could have gone Corduroy. You could have gone Even Flow, Mankind.
Animal. Yeah. I really like this daughter and that daughter tag. So like, that's up there for sure.
A lot
Absolutely,
of good moments.
Really good moments. So that asks me what to do with the rating. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8.5. Because I think it's just below some of them from this tour, like Berlin, Barcelona, Hamburg. I think it's right below those. So it's like the cream of the next of the crop, I'll say. So I'm going to say 8.5.
I need to give that Barcelona show a second listen, because I remember not really loving it when we did it. I remember we made some comments that it was like, it's just okay. And if it's anything like what this show was or better than this show, then yeah, it definitely deserves a second listen. And people mention it because of the sound check, and I think that's why it gets referenced a lot. But like you mentioned, Smile being part of a fan club single, that they hold it in pretty high regard too. Yeah. So I'm gonna give this an 8. I'm right in the same boat with you. I think that maybe this show is a 7 if I don't get maybe the show is a 7 if you don't get like the excitement of the crowd and the anticipation of this being the last show of the tour. But I think that really brought an energy out of both the band and the crowd in this, where everybody was acting in unison all night. And what's keeping me from making it higher is probably just the lack of history and notoriety to it. Like, there's not a lot of things, and that's okay. And that's great that you can kind of find like uncut gems like this. But there's certain things in the history of this band that you go back to, and you're like, that's the moment that made the show. There are a couple that maybe people from the show can go back to, but I don't know if Pearl Jam fans really remember this one, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So, as far as the show goes, it's fantastic. It's a great listen. It's a great watch. 8 is right in the wheelhouse. I think that's a very solid rating for that.
Okay. That's cool. If you, again, this is another one we talked about the same as last week. If you like set lists that are full of hits, if you need the corduroy, Better Man, Jeremy, Daughter, Rearview Mirror, Immortality, Alive, Black, Porch, like this is definitely a set for you. Like this is one that I'll probably go back to for some of it, but it doesn't have a lot of rare ones. You do get a Mankind, you do get a Hunger Strike, so there are a couple of moments in there, but I think the night before they had done Black, Red, Yellow, maybe night 1 in Lisbon, so
yes,
that gets a little more attention because of that. But yeah, I thought this was great to listen to. I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend it from the crowd standpoint, and if you want to get to basically listen to all of their set ender shows, then yeah, this is one you have to listen to. That's for sure. Yeah. So. All right. Well, speaking of set enders, that closes out the European leg of our around the world tour. How many shows from Europe did we do? Like maybe 20? It was a lot.
Yeah, it was at least
it's up there.
15, 16, yeah.
Yeah, so what are your favorite? What are some of your favorites from this, and maybe what are some that you wish that we would have gotten to?
Oh man, I love doing the Berlin show. That was a highlight just because been listening to it forever. Krakow I thought was great from 2018, a more recent one. I mean there weren't many stinkers in the bunch. Pink Pop.
Yeah, no, I think maybe the one that we did for Patreon, that was the opener for Neil Young from Finland. That one was kind of like, they weren't really in the best mindset at the time. But yeah, most of these were really, really fantastic shows. I loved Pink Pop 2000. I thought that was great. Brixton was fantastic from just sort of, getting a feel for what an early 90s, 1993 set was like. And, I agree. Krakow was another really good one too. We hit on a lot of fantastic stuff, and I'm sure, here's the thing. A lot of our requests that come in are going to be U.S. requests. So, we're going to take some random U.S. cities, but also we wanted to do this because we knew that, first of all, like you mentioned earlier, that there was going to be a European tour this year. So hitting all these spots up would help people get pumped up for the shows, especially a place like Budapest where they hadn't played in a long time, and Krakow, which they were going to go back to. But yeah, we're not going to get a chance to really do a lot more European shows in this kind of setting. So maybe next year we kind of splice them in. We make sure that we get a couple of outside of U.S., Canada kind of shows, but like this was the time to do it. So I'm glad we got it done.
Oh yeah, and from here on out, like we're finally getting to the South American leg, which is something I've been looking forward to since we had this idea. These are going to be special.
Yeah, and I think that we have to. First of all, we have to get into these shows because they're just kind of on a whole nother level. Like, this is a good segue crowd to get you into what Brazil's going to be like for next week, because we're doing Sao Paulo 2015 next week, which is apparently one of the best of the Brazil shows. So haven't listened to it yet, but looking forward to it entirely. I think that what we're going to be doing after listening to these is we're going to say, look, we got to bring back at least one or two of these South American or Central American shows back every year, because they're just so much fun to listen to. So we'll mix them in here and again. We'll get to them all.
Oh yeah, they're all fantastic. I think I remember posting on the forums, I think back a few years ago, probably 2014, 2015. I think I joked that we should rename the South of America, like Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. We should rename ourselves South America so that Pearl Jam would actually come play there.
Yeah, you would probably have a better chance of seeing them in Brazil than you would Atlanta.
That's right.
That's for sure. So, along with the Sao Paulo show that we're doing next week, we actually we're going to have an extra show for you guys. Basically, I call them the MVPs of the Pearl Jam quarantine era because Pearl Jam couldn't be around the quarantine era. Who filled in? Well, these 5 guys did. They are a cover band from Brazil that gotten, shot up in popularity this past spring when they covered Dance of the Clairvoyants and they covered Super Blood Wolf Moon, and they've been doing a lot of great stuff for charity. And basically, the day that Pearl Jam was supposed to go on tour in Toronto, and they had to cancel and all that, Black Circle stepped in and did a live stream and donated the money to a charity of their choosing that was really special to them, and it got the attention of both Ed and Jill. So it's going to be great. We're going to have them on. They have a new album that's coming out that's all originals, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I might spin some records on that, and we'll talk about they have firsthand knowledge of the Brazil shows. So if there's any good people to talk about the Brazil shows with, it's definitely them.
Oh yeah, if you haven't seen their cover versions, like it's uncanny. They sound great, and I think they got a shout out from Mike as well. Like
they did, yeah.
Just to get recognition like that for a cover band, it's fantastic. And yeah, the like you said, they've got an album originals coming out, so they're branching out a little bit. But yeah, it'll be great to talk to them. It'll be it's always great to get that firsthand perspective, especially on those insane South American shows.
Absolutely. So, yeah, they'll be here. We'll release that episode next Tuesday, and then we'll have Sao Paulo for 2015. All right, let's close this one out. We're done over here. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer, and although we may be parting ways, I miss you already. I miss you always. It was a great time in Europe, but we have to say goodbye, and we'll be back to Europe at some point in 2021. I would assume we'd go back for some show. I don't know. Give us a request. If you join Patreon, that's the best way for us to get to a show. But if you don't join Patreon, send us a show request, because we, like this one, this was a random comment on a random thread, and we picked up on it. So you just never know what we're going to get to. We're always thinking what you guys want. So, all right, let's close it on out. We'll see you next week for Sao Paulo 2015.
Shout out to Stone's parents.
I see you on another level. We'll make sure to come back. We won't forget these last couple nights. On behalf of our band, we'd like to thank the Fastbacks who played with us and played first. Richard Stuber who played. And most importantly, I'm going to go out of my way and thank the crew, because we have this little family here that does this thing. And I personally don't know how it's we do. But we'll hope to stay together, and we'll see you next time. And see you around. Thanks a lot, you guys. Take care of yourselves.